Greetings, fellow Gorehounds, and welcome back to a Blood Splattered vlog. I'm the Horror Guru.
And I'm Count Jackula.
And today we're going to be talking about Censor, which is a British horror film about a British censor during the Margaret Thatcher era and her slow descent into a madness that may or may not have always been there. It's a film that's very much in the vein of movies like Maniac or May.
Yeah. But
specifically commenting on censorship, and in particular, the 1980s era of video nasties. That's without getting too spoilery.
Yeah. The main character works at the censorship, essentially works at the censorship board. And everyone is, and she's always going like, I have so much responsibility. And like but the entire movie is like, yeah, you all realize responsibility is bullshit, right?
Yeah. She's basically she's a true believer. She believes that she's doing good for society by removing these video nasties, which for those of you who don't know, in the 1980s, during the Margaret Thatcher era of Great Britain, there was a censorship push. In particular, a censorship push that hit horror movies and exploitation movies, because during the era, that was the first era where video renting became a thing, where VHS tapes and things like that were now readily available to the public. So there was this huge scare of like, oh my God, think of the children. Kind of similar to what happened in America with the comic books in the 50s.
Yeah, very similar.
And as a result of this, Britain started cracking down on video stores and what they could sell and distribute. And so there were movies that were just outright banned, and these movies were often called the video nasties. Some movies that were included on these kind of video nasties lists were like movies like The First Evil Dead and things like that. This movie follows a person who was tasked with actually watching the movies and either cutting them and approving them, like actually actively removing shit from the movie and approving them to be seen, or banning them. And like I said, this movie is about her slow descent into madness. During the process of this.
Yeah. It also reminded me a little bit of the Astron 6's The Editor.
Yes, there's a little bit of that in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, I think the reason why it kind of has that vibe is because one of the cool things they do with this movie is they visually try to capture the vibe and spirit of the movies of that era. Yeah. In particular, the types of movies that were being banned. So they did a great job of recreating the kind of like neon colored lighting from the era. They did a great job of, at times they even literally like cropped the movies so that it was like
so it's full screen as opposed to
3x4 or 4x3, whatever it's called.
It's 4x5.
4x5?
Yeah.
Okay. And cropping it into that aspect ratio, so it literally looks like you're watching it on a TV screen of the day. Because also, for those of you who don't know, that are too young to know, back in the day they didn't have widescreens; they had square screens.
Yeah, they're all little squares because they couldn't figure of that cathode ray tube, man.
And so, like, part of like kind of her descent is like it's almost like her life starts turning into a video nasty in this really cool way.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that the movie is saying anything like, oh, the video nasties made her crazy. One of the points of the movie is that the movies didn't do this to her. She was kind of already
She was
this way.
unhinged from the beginning.
The movies are more or less an excuse and a scapegoat in the situation, which is kind of true to real life, because the whole reason why they cracked down on these movies is they were using it as an excuse to argue, oh, this is why crime rates are up. Not because of poverty, not because of class issues or anything like that.
We're enough immigrants to blame back in those days in Great Britain, so we gotta find something.
Yeah. So like obviously it is the video store rentals, and in particular horror movies, that are doing it.
Yep.
It's very similar to the scare that happened in the 50s in America, where they're just like, juvenile delinquency. Obviously, comic books are to blame.
Yes, absolutely. Of course. It's Tales from the Crypt. They did it.
Or even in America in the 80s, which didn't get as bad as Britain did, but we still had our own little version of it with the whole Filthy 15.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't become as infamous because, like, one thing you gotta say about America is it will generally side on the side of business.
Yeah, well, the thing is okay, so Britain actually has had I have no idea if they still do, but they did definitely back then, a straight up censorship board that actively bans movies and cuts them from a government level. In America, we have a separate entity called the MPAA, as well as some other entities that don't outright censor, but put these ratings on movies that are kind of like guidelines that people follow. But it becomes this weird de facto censorship because everyone follows those guidelines. Like they might as well be a top down thing sometimes.
The big difference is they can't like put you in jail.
Exactly. That's the key difference, because one of the things about the video nasty era is they were actively throwing people in jail for distributing these movies. That's not something that happens in America. And to make things worse, I actually, in one of the documentaries I watched on the video nasties, I found out that like one of the laws they passed to throw these people in jail was never actually officially like certified. So they had to pass another law to retroactively certify it.
Yeah.
So that even though they should have been let out of jail at that point, it retroactively made it illegal.
Yeah.
Which was like one of the most draconian, ridiculous things I've ever heard.
There's, specifically in America, that would not have legally flown.
You can't do that in America.
No. It's one of the Bill of Rights protections.
So for all our faults, one thing I will say is that we got you on that, Britain.
Yeah.
We have many other problems that are worse than you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, if I get a cough, I just die. So
But like as a person who is a huge defender of horror movies and exploitation films, the video nasties thing is something that I'm very familiar with. So I was kind of excited to watch a movie that is literally tackling that like as a horror movie.
Yeah.
And I thought this movie did a damn good job.
It did. It was a lot of fun. It's not a horribly complex film.
No.
It's more of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah. It's got the same kind of like psychological thriller vibes of like movies like May or Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, where you're just watching someone slowly lose their mind.
Yeah, well, another one that I kept thinking of while I was watching was Mulholland Drive.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah. I can totally see that. Yeah. Mulholland Drive does a lot of really cool things with like what's real and what's not, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. This one's a bit more straightforward than Mulholland Drive.
Lynch will never give you the answers, whereas this movie gives you some pretty clear answers, even while still being ambiguous. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So I thought the acting was good. I love the cinematography of this movie. I thought they did a great job of recreating the feel of those straight-to-video gory horror movies.
Oh yeah. The only problem is that you can tell that it's shot with modern cameras. They didn't do as good a job of hiding it as like say Crystal Eyes did.
True.
But you
can still tell it's a digital shot.
Yeah. You can tell it's like
high
that was shot in high def. That's a fucking red. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that actually does bring up one minor criticism, and I don't even know how much of a criticism it is because it doesn't really bug me. But just we pointed out when we were watching the movie that there's a point in which a murder happens in the movie that's not connected to the main character, but the public gets out that the murderer was inspired by a movie that she approved, and so the public starts going after her like, how dare you censors, you let this happen. And I don't know. I honestly don't know if that's something that happened often in Britain at the time, but one thing I am familiar with is that whenever something like that happens and a piece of media is somehow tied to a violence that is enacted in real life, I've never seen in my life people go after the censors.
Yeah, I've never seen that.
I usually see them go after the people that made the movie, or the video game, or the music. I usually see people go after that before they go after the censor, even if the censor was the one who approved it.
Yep.
So maybe that's a Britain thing that was lost in translation to me, but that was one thing where I was just like, I don't think that's how that would have happened.
Yeah, in America, that's kind of unthinkable. No one would touch the censor.
But for the conceit of the movie, I understand why the plot goes that way, because part of the main character's like anxiety in the film is this huge, immense feeling of responsibility with what she's doing. So I understand why they did that, because it like applies a little bit more pressure on the main character. And part of their descent. And the thing that's nice about the movie is it's sort of like, you realize none of this has to be happening. Right? Yep. The other thing I like is that from a visual standpoint, the movie kind of starts off feeling like a modern movie, just with some neon lighting, and then slowly as the movie goes on, the digital high def film starts looking more and more like grainy.
Yeah.
A film. The aspect ratio starts to shrink, and the movie starts to get gorier as it goes on too.
Yeah.
So it's like you're like watching a movie slowly transform like a werewolf into a video nasty.
Yeah. Which you could tell was part of the point.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that the idea was like, yeah, we're gonna go from normal life to, all right, where the fuck are we now? You know.
I also want to say there's a line in the movie. I'm gonna butcher the line, so I'm just gonna paraphrase it. Where one character who makes these kinds of movies makes the point that like, I don't create the horror in the world. The horror is all around us, which is kind of a point I've been trying to make online for a long time, because here's my little internal philosophy when it comes to this. Yes, media can influence people. Obviously, like when I saw The Matrix, I went out and bought a trench coat.
Yeah.
The movie did like influence me and inspire me because trench coats are cool, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing that it doesn't seem to wholly affect is people's tendency to commit violence, unless, and here's the big unless it's a piece of media that was presented to you as being entirely real.
Yeah.
And in this instance, I'm talking about things like stuff you hear on the news. Things you hear on the news, things that like political pundits out there say, and things that are presented either as an urban, that are an urban myth but are treated like they're real, they have more of a tendency to cause people to do actual violence in real life than a fictional movie will.
Yeah. QAnon inspires way more violence.
Exactly.
Than any
something
horror
like
movie
QAnon,
ever
which is telling people that there's this thing and that it's totally real and that's a real threat. Like you can make an entire movie about a conspiracy movement in which some election was stolen and that there's like Satanists in basements that are eating babies. You can make an entire movie about that, and there's not going to be a riot on Capitol Hill the next day.
Yeah.
But a concerted campaign of people delivering misinformation and presenting it as real over the course of a couple years, that might do it, you know?
Yeah, because like it has to be that reinforced.
Exactly.
You know?
Now, while it's possible for a fictional movie to maybe reinforce some of those ideas, it's not going to be the originator of those ideas, nor is it going to be the catalyst that causes something to happen.
No.
Not most of the time. There are like a couple exceptions, like there's a really interesting study out of New Zealand that showed that like even neutral reporting of suicides can cause copycat suicides.
Yeah.
We all think about the thing that happened in the 90s when Kurt Cobain killed himself, and then there was a rash of people who killed themselves in response to Kurt Cobain killing himself. It turns out that's actually a problem across the board.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who does it.
So whether or not you're talking about it neutrally, whether or not you're glorifying it, whether or not you are trying to unglorify it, just the act of talking about suicides can inspire people to suicide because it puts suicide in their brain. But that doesn't seem to be true for other types of... That's like a self-inflicted violence. There's not exactly...
Yeah, well, you also run into the other problem, whereas if you try to deny it, it also makes things
well, because the problem is like that the study was very fascinating, because the problem is that if you don't talk about it at all, it creates this public perception that it's not a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So there's no awareness. And when there's no awareness, that means there's no campaigns or anything to try to help the situation and alleviate it.
Right.
Like if you have no awareness, you're not going to try to throw some money into mental health, anything, because you don't think it's a problem. We're all good, right? But if you raise the awareness, you also, the people that are on the edge are now thinking about the suicides because you're not talking about it.
Yeah, the idea is out
So it's
there,
like a double-edged sword. That's a very specific situation where it's a super double-edged sword. But like,
in movies, it's not so double-edged. At all.
But like actually like someone watching like a horror movie in which someone gets hacked and slashed, you got the big titty chicks who are in their showers getting slashed together by slasher killers. There has been no scientific evidence or study that has shown that leading to someone doing that.
Yeah. It doesn't happen.
and a movie that kind of takes that to task. I kind of appreciate.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I kind of went on a tangent there. Sorry, this kind of touches upon, as horror fans, these are things that we talk about. And
you think I make the horror, but the horror is already there.
Yeah,
you know.
This is something that we think about all the time. So like, obviously, this movie just hit us right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah. I definitely agreed with that line. I'm like, yeah,
100%.
it's already there. Why are we watching movies about people killing each other? Because people kill each other.
Well, because exactly. Like movies. Stories often are reflections of the world, more so than the creators of the world. Even though you are in a story creating a world, like the reason why slasher movies in the 1980s had this whole like, if you have sex you die kind of mentality was because the 1980s in America was a resurgence of an American fundamentalism. Which was happening absent the slasher movies. Outside of the slasher movies, it was happening. So that mentality ended up being reflected in the slasher movies. Same thing with why did movies get increasingly more violent in the 1970s? Well, partially it's because a whole bunch of young filmmakers back then were trying to be more subversive than like the movies of their youth.
But you'll notice that in the 70s, in a weird fucking way, they're far more liberal morality.
True, and part of the reason why the 70s movies got as violent as they did was because they were a reflection of the violence that people had either experienced firsthand,
a lot of street violence during that period of time,
or seen on the TV, because this was the post-Vietnam era.
Yep.
You had an entire generation of young people that went off to war and like saw and or committed atrocities. You had the people that were at home watching it on TV, because one of the things that people don't often know that are too young to understand, back during the Vietnam era, the actual war was televised.
Yeah.
They don't do that as much anymore.
It was like the first time they really did that, and it was kind of the last.
So you could turn on the TV and literally see people carrying bodies and like bombs going off and stuff like that. Like, you know, like when a bombing happens, like in a war conflict today, you get like that grainy news footage of like a night vision camera from a distance.
Yeah, and it's blowing up all the way over there.
Back then, there was literally people on the ground reporting with footage of like actual injured soldiers and people getting shot at and reporters getting shot at in a way you don't see today. So naturally, the horror movies that happened after that got more violent too.
Yeah.
Because the world felt more violent to people. And so my whole ultimate point is that like these movies are often more reflections than the causes of things. They're reflecting the things that are happening. You know, another great example being like post Abu Ghraib, we got a whole bunch of torture horror movies.
That's not an accident.
Exactly.
That's not coincidence.
You know. Anyway, total tangent. So I highly recommend Censor, especially if you're a true blue horror fan or an anti-censorship type of person. You should definitely see Censor. And with that said, it is currently available on various platforms to rent, but only to rent. It's not for free on any platform as far as I'm aware, so you're gonna have to rent it. It just came out, so go out and support the movie. It deserves the support. And with that said, let us move on to the spoilers so we can actually talk about the plot of the movie.
Alright, so turns out our Censor protagonist has like a sister that went missing back in her childhood.
Yep, the child's been missing, and this has caused her a great source of anxiety that obviously is reflected in her adult life. You also get the impression this is part of the reason why she goes down this whole path of like becoming a censor and all that stuff, is because she doesn't want whatever happened to her sister to happen to anyone else. So if censoring movies is what stops crime and kidnapping and murder, then she's gonna censor movies so that no one gets kidnapped like her sister.
Yeah, which makes absolutely no sense, because you're like, well, what movie inspired the crime that inspired you?
Exactly.
You know, like, you think about it, you're like, dude, your sister disappeared way before video nasties were a thing.
You know, and one of the cool little parallels you have happening at the beginning of the movie is that, like, the mom and the dad have basically decided to like give up, and that the sister is probably dead somewhere. So they decided to
because it's been like 20 years.
Yeah, they decided to just
have her declared dead.
Dead, and the sister is not happy with this, and it's very, very much implied that this is like the source of what will eventually be her psychotic break that happens over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
This is like the origin point here. Her sister officially being declared dead. So what ends up happening after that is she starts watching a movie that she's supposed to censor, and it starts reflecting a weird memory she has of her sister and her going out into the woods. And this is supposedly when her sister disappeared. Now, one of the things that's very clear at the very beginning is that this movie she's watching involves two sisters out in the woods going into this weird cabin, and one of the sisters killing the other sister.
Yep.
And it doesn't say it right away, but one of the things that you quickly pegged right away is that, all right, the way this movie is going, she killed her sister.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, the movie never actually outright states, like, in expositional dialogue, she killed her sister. But my interpretation as the way the movie went, she killed her sister.
Yeah, because you definitely, like, watching her madness, you definitely see how it would have happened.
What you also,
like, she's so mentally unstable.
You get the impression that her mind has internally censored her own life.
Yep.
So the reason why she's convinced that her sister disappeared is because she cannot handle or accept the truth that she killed her own sister.
Yeah.
Probably in a psychotic break, because she's probably been dealing with whatever issues she has since she was a kid, but she's been ignoring it, censoring it out of her life and pretending it doesn't exist. Basically compartmentalizing in her own brain. Which is a very, I love it because it's a very good commentary on the act of censorship itself, like trying to hide away the dark parts of the world and pretend like it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or to scapegoat, like, oh, if we show that, that's going to cause it to happen.
Yeah,
right? You
yeah.
know?
And the fact that, oh God, that one scene in the video, the scene where you hate her the most is when she's in that video store.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she's threatening the proprietor.
Oh man, that hit me hard because
God.
I know how many proprietors like that literally did jail time, like had their lives ruined by this whole thing.
Yeah.
And she's like threatening them, throwing her weight around, and you're like, Jesus Christ, lady, what the fuck? You know, and the reason why she's throwing her weight around is because she wants a copy of one of that guy who she's censoring's other movies.
Yeah, to see if there are any other clues that
that might lead, because she's convinced herself that her sister is in that guy's movies and that he has something to do with how she disappeared, because she can't accept the truth that she killed her sister. At least that's my interpretation.
Yeah, oh yeah. This is definitely my interpretation too. It doesn't outright state that that's what happens.
No.
But like, when you get to the end of the movie, you're like, well, one of these things is more likely than the other.
But what I also like is that kind of like the ambiguous way it handles that, it kind of reflects some of the more European video nasties with their kind of like vague endings.
Yeah. Like the one thing that you know by the end of this movie is that this woman is crazy.
Oh yeah, because we basically watch as the movie goes on, and one thing I really like about the movie is that it's one thing that I think is really cool about the movie is that they could have very easily made a movie where she was just like a Dolores Umbridge and just completely and utterly unsympathetic and hateful.
Oh yeah. She's not completely unsympathetic.
But one thing I like about the movie is that, like, from the very get-go, you kind of empathize with her like anxieties that she has at the beginning, because like you can see they're coming from a real place. And one of the other things I really like is they also show that, like, even though she's a censor and even though she's cutting these movies and even though she has this weird position of power, she's still kind of depowered herself when we have situations where like men are like hitting on her or like trying to force themselves on her and stuff. So like you can see that like some of her anxieties about like the world like are coming from an actual threat, you know? So I do like that the movie's not entirely black and white in that way. There is some shades of gray there, but it does have a very definitive point.
Yeah.
You know?
I liked how when she actually, near the end of the movie, she actually like gets on the current movie set of the director she's kind of stalking.
She manages to stumble upon the movie set in her search, and they end up thinking that she is the actress that's supposed to play. Okay, so in the movie, it is a sequel to one of the other movies he made, and there's an actress in that movie that's returning in this movie that they're filming, that she is convinced is her sister. When she stumbles across the set, they think that she is the actress who was hired to play the actress's in-movie sister.
Yeah.
So they put her in makeup and they do a whole screen test with her. The screen test was one of the best scenes in the movie too, because that's where the whole line about horror movies and stuff happens. But you also get this weird impression that they kind of know who she is. It's weird, but it's hard to tell how much of that is real because it's obvious this is the point in which she's an unreliable narrator.
Yeah. She's starting to seriously have her psychotic break at this point.
Because this is like, there's a point when these scenes were happening where the aspect ratio changed and I didn't even notice it first.
Yeah. You know, and that's like one of your tip-offs.
Yeah.
You know,
that we're in the movie in her head. The video nasty that her life has become.
Yeah, and one of the other things is like the part of the justification for things being so weird, for these people acting so weird, is that it's a night shoot on a low budget movie and everyone's just sick of everyone's shit.
Oh yeah, and it's obvious it's a very unorganized, scattered film
production.
Shoot. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like she gets to the
Which holy shit, is that relatable?
Oh yeah. Oh god. Like when she meets the makeup girl, she's like, "Get in the chair."
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't have time to answer your fucking questions. I gotta get ready for the shoot. Fuck this. Get in the chair, sit down, shut up.
I'm gonna put this right here. This is not a real criticism, all right? This is not real. This is just me being a nitpicky asshole. All right, I love the way this movie looks, but I'm gonna tell you one thing.
Yeah?
That makeup trailer with all the neon lights and stuff like that, terrible for putting makeup on.
No way. Yeah, no way.
You want you want the cleanest, whitest light you could possibly get so that you can make sure you get all the details of the makeup right.
Yeah, you want that vanity lighting, you know?
You don't want, okay, the lighting we have right here, you don't want that while you're applying the makeup because...
You'll fuck it up. You know? Any makeup artist, any good makeup artist will be like, you want me to do this under neon light? I hate you.
This is the screen test you do after you put the makeup on. Yeah. You know? To make sure it looks right in the light, and then you do the little touch-ups there, you know. But anyway, that's just me being a nitpicky asshole.
Well, yeah. Like if you didn't do movie stuff, you wouldn't even notice.
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, but basically, if you can't tell, because I compared this to movies like May or Maniac or Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, she starts racking up a body count over the course of this movie. Now, the first person we see her kill, it's relatively justified because it's a movie producer who's trying to have the casting couch situation with her. Yeah. You know, he's just trying to force himself upon her. And she ends up, in this case, accidentally... impaling him on one of his not an Oscar, but whatever
like some sort of like Rondo Award or whatever it
whatever
is,
award he got, like he was impaled by it through the fucking throat. And this is when you go, oh, this movie's gonna be gory. Yeah. This movie's gonna be nasty. You know, by the time she gets to the film set, it starts becoming a fucking slasher movie.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, with the censor as the slasher, because the censor will slash the movie.
Yeah. She's got to cut all the bad parts out. So now she's the slasher killer. Yeah. That's cutting all the bad people out. So it's
yeah. But she's completely oblivious to reality. Like,
oh yeah,
she murders this one guy. And there's like the sound crew right there going, "What the fuck?"
I love that scene because it's like at first we're like, okay, so is she having a dream imagining the movie, or is this the actual film shoot? And you're not quite sure until Sasquatch Danzig starts going, wait, that's not in the script. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I say Sasquatch Danzig because the movie within a movie has this one ethereal demonic figure who keeps showing up, and he's this big buff, like biker looking dude who looks like a cross between like the literal Sasquatch and Glenn Danzig.
Yeah, and he's got like a weird facial deformity, like so he's really obviously supposed to be like your Michael Berryman, your Robert Zadar, like dude.
And part of the reason why I say Sasquatch is because he's got like one of those
he's super hairy.
He's super hairy, and he's also got like one of those prominent brows that makes him look
that
like
Neanderthal brow.
Yeah,
you know.
And also there's like a shot in one of the earlier scenes when she's censoring one of the movies, where he's like walking in the distance in the woods, and it looks like the Sasquatch footage.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like that had to be on purpose.
Yeah,
that had to be on purpose. Like, well, the other thing is, I want to know whether that's the guy's real face or if that was a makeup job.
I don't know.
Yeah,
he kind of had a Wolfman thing going on.
Yeah,
cool.
It was like it looked really cool. Like, either way, let us know.
That guy was awesome. I want to see that guy in more movies.
Yeah.
So anyway, she like fucking like wails on him with a fucking axe, and the entire film crew is just like,
what the fuck just happened? You know?
And then like she tries to grab the actress that she thinks is her sister and run off with her, and it's just like, you're my sister, I'm trying to save you, we gotta get out of here, you're my sister. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I have a sister and she's not you. And it's very obvious that this whole sister thing, her sister's dead. Her sister has long been dead.
She got to be. Yeah.
And if she wasn't the one who killed her, she witnessed it happen.
Yeah.
You know, one of the two. And this actress is not her sister. She just looks like her, but is not her sister. And so then we transition into the David Lynchian ending, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Where she censors out whatever in her head, she has censored out whatever awful thing happens at this point in the third act, and it becomes the happy forced ending that was put upon a movie that was obviously not supposed to have a happy ending.
Like the forced ending of Brazil or something. Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden you're in like this really like Tim Burton-y version of like a happy suburban world happening. Like
Well, it felt a lot like the opening of Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
You know?
So like and in her mind, she's brought her sister back to her family, and everything's all happy and cheery, and like everything is okay. But while we're seeing this footage, it's flash cutting what's really happening.
Yeah, she's beaten and kidnapped this woman,
and the woman's screaming.
Yeah.
And it like ends with her like smiling into the camera, and I was just like, oh man, I love this movie.
Oh yeah, it was really good. It was really good.
Like she couldn't handle the truth at the end, so even in the end, she created a happier version, a censored version.
Yeah, a censored version of what was going on. You know. Oh man.
I highly recommend Censor. I just think it's a damn good movie.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say about it?
No, I really loved it. I thought it was great. You know, if anyone involved in the film wants to comment or follow us on Twitter, please do so.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing.
That stuff.
If there's any details about what we're talking about, like if there's something about the movie that we also missed, feel free to comment below.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because this is the kind of movie where I know there are layers to it that is going on, and I'm not going to get all the layers in just the one viewing we had. So
yeah. So okay. So what's the hashtag this time?
Oh man, let's see. Hashtag cut the shit. I don't know.
Hashtag cut the shit.
All right,
kids.
If you made it this far into the vlog, then put hashtag cut the shit somewhere into your comment below, so that way I know that you watched the vlog all the way through. And with that said, where can they find you, Count Jackula?
You can find me on Twitch every Thursday and Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, where I stream and I talk about all sorts of groovy things, horror movies, strange tales from the internet, alternative culture stuff, and all the kinds of things that your parents don't want you to hear about on the internet, I generally will talk about. You can also find me on Twitter at JackSatanWave, and you can find me on Instagram at SatanicJackula. And we'd love to see you there. So Ave Satanas and Disco Inferno. What about you?
Y'all know me. I'm the Horror Guru. You can find me at the Horror Guru on Twitter, on Twitch, on Facebook, and Instagram. Just look up the Horror Guru or Blood Splattered Cinema, and I will be there. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And if you would like to help out either of us more directly, be sure to check out our Patreon pages. And remember, if you decide to go the Patreon route, even $1 a month can go a long way. And with that said, we got some more vlogs to record, so we're gonna do that.
You're really good at your job. How are you good at being a censor over any others?
I know.
You know, like...
Well, the vibe I got was that the reason why she was so good at it was because she wasn't fazed by the movies until she was. And I think part of the reason why she wasn't fazed by the movies, and this is because of my interpretation of the movie, is because she had already fucking killed somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it didn't start to affect her until it hit too close to home.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah.
So don't be a censor or you'll kill your sister.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.